Education is known as the great equalizer. It can spur personal growth and allow people to contribute to their families, communities, and society by creating a skilled and knowledgeable workforce. And that's why education is a fundamental right in Minnesota's Constitution. But supporting the state's students, teachers, and the education system itself takes work. With me now is a senator who is doing that work. As the ranking minority member of the Education Policy Committee, the mama bear herself, Republican Senator Julia Coleman. Senator, thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks. Good to be back.
Senator, one thing we know you've been following is the state's teacher shortage. How big of an issue is that, and what's causing it?
It's a big problem in Minnesota. When we had power sharing and I had the gavel for 3 weeks, one of the things we talked about was the teacher shortage. And we had, rather than just an agency come in, we had teachers and superintendents and school board members and principals come in and talk to us about the exact areas in statute, the exact policies and red tape that is getting in the way of them hiring teachers. Something as simple as, say they have a vacancy and they want to bring back a retired teacher, just temporarily. We block them from doing that. And so there's a lot of ways where we can remove the red tape. There's a couple of things that passed over the last 2 years that we can roll that back. And I would like to see more conversations, not just one committee hearing, but perhaps even eventually a task force.
Senator, so you mentioned a task force and removing red tape. How can we get these things going? What can legislators do to help with this shortage?
I think listening is a big one. So we've had hearings before, and I think Pelsby certainly serves a role in the state, but in another way, it also oversteps its bounds in the teacher shortage. And so what we need to do is actually listen to the boots on the ground. And that's what we attempted to do when we had the gavel and were able to actually hear from the teachers and the superintendents. And it almost started to sound like before they got up to the microphone, I could tell them exactly what they were going to say, because it started to be the same issues over and over. And my hope was, in having those 3 listening sessions when I was the chair of the committee, was that we would start to hear from the people that are most impacted by this. The principal desperately trying to fill a spot, a principal that has been finding creative solutions, and then we block them from actually making anything happen. And so that we can actually start to put forth policies that aren't coming from agencies but coming from people. And I did drop a bill today that seeks to address one of those issues with licensure and being able to renew it. And so I hope that we can create more pathways, easier pathways, while maintaining the quality that we expect in our classrooms.
Speaking of pathways, you have a bill, Senate File 442, which is a skills path program, which hopes to create new pathways to help with other shortages, right? So talk me through that bill. It's a skills path program.
Skills Path is something I've been working on for quite some time, and it's amazing. It's one of those ideas you have while you're campaigning, and then you realize how big of an undertaking it is as you go through the legislative process. And essentially what it does is direct the Department of Labor and the Department of Education to create clear pathways for students, much like we do with PSEO for college, but to skilled jobs. And I'm even looking to expanding that to emergency medical jobs, things like that, firefighters, police. And so it is sort of like PSEO for the trades. And I think that when I was in school, now that was a while ago, I'm in my 30s now, but the intention was very much everyone is expected to go to college. And even a generation later, in my siblings who are quite a bit younger than me, we're discovering is that's not the pathway for everybody. And in fact, our workforce suffered from that mentality. And we as lawmakers and then as educators need to do our best to make sure there are pathways into all sorts of options, because we can find people with 4-year degrees, but there's a wait list to get a pipe fitter, a plumber, an electrician to build a new house. And so my hope is that we can keep addressing some of the things we need to tweak in the bill. And every year I hear from more and more groups that we can perfect it. And gosh darn, I'd really like to get that done before I'm done here.
Yeah, you mentioned that you are hoping to even include more, programs like emergency skills. And we just had Senator Nelson on, and she has a bill exactly that. So you might have an ally there.
Absolutely. No, I'm the daughter of a cop. My husband's a firefighter, and I can't believe I didn't think of it myself. So.
Well, speaking of that, school safety is a concern, and it's one that you've talked about a lot. You have a bill out, Senate File 676, that asks for more transparency when it comes to violent incidents on school grounds. So talk me through what inspired you to write that.
It was one of those meetings I just won't forget. This happened last session, and a St. Paul middle school teacher asked if I could sit down with her for a little bit. And what I heard, I didn't feel right. There are very few meetings where I struggle to get through the rest of the day because what I heard hit me so profoundly. And this middle school teacher in St. Paul was telling me that students were bringing weapons to school, joining gangs, having to witness fights daily. For their own safety, they're bringing weapons and joining gangs. Good kids that are just scared. And I couldn't imagine, one, being a student trying to learn in that environment, and two, being a parent who perhaps has no other means to send their children anywhere else, knowing that I'm sending my child into that environment every day. I mean, my heart just broke. And what that bill did, the reason she didn't speak out more was because she feared for her job. She was basically told, you speak up, you're fired. It puts teachers in the whistleblower protection so that they can talk, as long as they're protecting student data privacy, they can talk about what's going on in their schools. And then it puts an incident reporting in there. If violence occurs, if a weapon is brought to school, parents need to be notified. And that sounds like an unfunded mandate, but I'll tell you why it's not. Because when I was sitting in the hearing for that bill, while I was giving my testimony, I quick looked at my phone and I had 3 messages from my kids' school. Don't forget to pack snow boots on Friday. COVID's going around, and oh, don't forget next week we have this event at school. I mean, it's very easy now with modern technology to send out notifications at no cost. So I think as long as we are protecting our teachers and doing our part to keep parents informed, we're going to want to see more public outrage on this, and that we are able to get more lawmakers interested in addressing this as a result of the sunlight.
Yeah, parents are partners in this process, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Are there other school safety concerns that you've heard from constituents that are being addressed by bills this session?
I just came from committee, and we actually heard about how prevalent fentanyl is in our schools. And it's amazing how much our school environments have changed just since I was there. I graduated in 2010 from high school. And we're talking about kids being able to carry Narcan around and administer it. And I understand the need, and then at the same time, my heart breaks that that's even an option. And so we do have a bill addressing that. It was a Seeberger bill. But I looked at my chair, and Swadinsky and I get along very, very well. And every interim, we get together over a coffee or a more entertaining beverage and talk about what we want to accomplish together. And I said, we need to accomplish the student experience. When we're talking about fentanyl in our schools, all of them, when we're talking about violence in our schools and weapons in our schools, we need to get together in the interim and come forward with a student experience package, because I don't know how you can focus in class with that around you.
Absolutely. And I love that you guys are working together like that. Not all committees are like that, so I love that, especially on a topic like this.
Right.
Senator, another thing that you've pushed for this session is special education funding. You have Senate File 1819, which has to do with the special education cross-subsidy bill, which would increase the amount of special education aid paid for by the state. So talk to me about, what this bill is addressing, like the need for it, and what its chances of passing are, considering the financial situation we find ourselves in.
It's unfortunate that we are talking about cutting things like education and human services because of going from a surplus to a deficit in, well, they say 2 years, but actually it was one budget session, so a few months. Those are the last areas that we should be cutting from. And I don't think our students, our school districts, our seniors, our nursing homes should be the ones that have to pay the price for this. I do know that when I go and listen to my school districts, that they talk about the special education cross-subsidy. And this is something that we tried flagging when our coffers were full. This is something that we need to address, particularly now with the deficit here and what's going on in DC. We need to make sure that these unfunded mandates are actually getting some funding, and that things like special education are not going to be cut. Now, I know that when we talk about ending the Department of Ed federally, we know that that's getting moved to HHS, so special ed is going to be okay. But what's going to happen here statewide, I mean, that's a sticky subject for our schools, and they don't even know how to plan their budget. As you know, we don't have budget targets yet ourselves. So I'm hoping that something like this will get passed. Gosh, I don't know what's going to happen this session yet. I don't think any of us do.
All right. Senator, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we are working together. We have 201 legislators in the state. 100 are Republicans, 101 are Democrats. We have never been this divided before. And we have the opportunity to hit each other and try to score political points and place blame and take this all the way to a shutdown. Or we have the opportunity to really listen to the people of Minnesota. And that's what I attempted to do when I held the gavel for 3 weeks, was to listen to the people of Minnesota. And I hope that it's those voices that are reflected when we move forward with our budget, when we move forward with our policies and how we conduct ourselves here.
Senator, thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it.